Hi there, guys. Just some ordinary dude here, and this should be a particularly fun podcast. Today, I've got two guests. We've got our series regular at this point, Alana. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good.
And we've also got quite a prestigious guest with us today. We've got Amanda Lioi, also known by some people in the fandom as Cartoonist99. And she is not only a very talented illustrator who does lots of great artwork for the Loud House, but also she's actually a professional writer for the official Loud House comics developed by Papercutz. How are you today, Amanda?
I'm doing wonderful.
Yeah, this is a podcast talk we've been trying to get arranged for quite a while, but it's sometimes difficult to get everyone available at once. But this should be a really fun talk. Now, it's a little bit of a confession for you. I haven't actually followed the Loud House comics that closely. I've seen a few editions over the time. I've
Mhm.
seen a few stories. But I'm not the biggest follower of the comics, so I may take a bit more of a back step on this particular talk and let Amanda and
Not at
Alana
all.
have a bit more of a back and forth. I'm sure this should be a very fun podcast for them both. Alana is a very big fan and follower of the Loud House comics, so I'm sure she'll have plenty of things to talk about with Amanda here. And I'm sure Amanda has something she'd like to say. Regarding the Loud House comics, I suppose we should start off with, Amanda. How did you come about to writing for the comics?
Okay, so it's a very long story. So I first heard about the graphic novels back in 2017 because that's when I started watching the cartoon. And I've always been into storytelling and sequential storytelling and writing. So
Yeah,
um, I think it was like I want to say March 2020. I started reaching out to people on Instagram that I found who actually did work for the comics because I think it was the first 6 or 7 graphic novels in the series. Don't quote me on this. They only had people on the show do write and illustrate stories for the comics, and then at a certain point they started inviting outside talent from Nickelodeon.
yeah.
So not only I don't know how they do it now. I think it's mostly people that don't work on the show that write and draw. But I think occasionally someone from the show does do a comic or two in there.
Mm.
Um, but back in March of 2020, I did reach out to a couple of people who've been working on the books, and they told me how they got hired, and they were like, "How about you go and submit a portfolio of characters and stuff like that?" So I was like, "Okay, I'll go reach out." And at the time they weren't looking for any artists. This was right before the whole pandemic and everything and the shutdown. So that summer I took the liberty to gather my portfolio, and then I reached out again in August. It was actually while I was on vacation. I heard back from my editor at the time, or the editor at the time for Papercutz, and he told me they wanted me to do an art test. And basically, what that is sort of a how do I explain? It's like a test comic. It's like a see where your storytelling capabilities are, to see if you can match the style quality of the show and stuff like that. So I spent like August of 2020 through December of 2020 like perfecting that. So it was ready for presentation in Nickelodeon. And then in February, I got the call, or not really a call, email that I had been hired as an artist for the comics. And then so I did about 3 or 4 stories throughout 2021. It was kind of slow because I was just starting out. And then I want to say it was like October of 2021. My editor at the time, he reached out to everybody via email, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys want to submit pitches for?" I think it was volume 16 at the time, so this was a while back. Um, he's like, "We're taking pitches from people. Like, you can submit a couple ideas if you want." And so I was like, "Okay, I'll throw one out there." So it was the rock and roll model story about Luna and Lily, because I really wanted to see that character pairing together. So I just kind of threw it out there, and I thought like, okay, kind of forgot about it for a few months, and then my editor, he ended up leaving Papercutz, go work at Nickelodeon as a comic artist. So another guy stepped in, and I think it was February, almost like a year to the date that I got hired as an illustrator. Um, the next editor, he reached out to me in February of 2022, and he said, "Hey, Nickelodeon liked this pitch that you submitted back in October, so they were wondering if you want to be a writer." So that's how it all started.
Okay, that sounds really
That's
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting how all that sort of came about. Yeah, so we know now we have a bit of an insight as to how you became a writer and illustrator for the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we have that, Alana, I suppose I should ask you, as a fan of the comics, how did you get into the How did you get into the comics? How did you start reading them all? Or is it just naturally you were watching the show and sort of thought, oh, I might as well check out the comics as well? Is that how that came about?
Yeah, well, I started watching the show around like 2016, like when it came out,
Mm-hmm.
and like for like a while, I actually didn't know that they like even made comics. So I think
Yep.
it wasn't until like maybe around, I would say, ooh, well, I knew like around 2018 that they made comics, but then like I didn't start reading them, and I couldn't find where to read them until around like I'd say like 2021. So it was
Okay.
like a long time after. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of those, isn't it? Where yeah, as someone who has followed the show so closely for a number, well, since 2016 actually, I've been aware of the comics. I have seen some of their stories and everything. I've never followed it that closely. I guess, even though I do have the link to the website where they're all basically online, where you can read them for free.
Yeah.
But I've never actually. I'm not entirely sure. What do you guys think of that, by the way? Because there's a website where you can just read all these comics for free. So I have no idea. Like, do the Roundhouse comics, do they get bought a lot? Do they make a lot of like sales and profit in general?
Um. Yeah. I mean, we all get paid royalties every book that's sold. I think it's like most of them are sold e-commerce, so
Yeah,
you can either download the ebook or
yeah,
you can buy a physical copy. They're not
mm,
actually, surprisingly, they're not sold in stores.
no,
Some of the older books are, like, I'd say like volumes like 1 through 10, maybe I've seen those at the stores, but
yeah,
like any of them I've done work for, I think they were at a Target. I think my aunt found them at a
yeah.
Target like once, and that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say
So
that's surprising because let's be brutally honest here. Loud Ass as a franchise has never been marketed or promoted very well. It's never had a little
right.
merchandise like really sold out there to the public. Let's be honest here. So it doesn't surprise me that the comics haven't had that much exposure outside of like the internet. Um,
Right.
yeah, which is a bit
I have
weird.
seen a few at like Barnes and Noble, I'd say, but that's like the only place I've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them there too, but like they're some of the earlier ones. So like we're talking, like I said, like volumes 1 through 10, or like anything within that range. I don't think I've ever seen anything like after that. It's so weird. And I've actually asked them about it too, like, hey, do you guys ever get these in stock? And they really like didn't have anything to tell me. So I was like, I guess like the demand for them in brick and mortar stores isn't as great as like e-commerce, which doesn't surprise me because like everything is done online nowadays. So
Yeah,
including shopping here.
and also the fact
So
that yeah, and
I
also
wish they did though.
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it would be nice if they could get the comics a bit more popular, get them sold a bit more. But then again, it would be nice to do that with the whole show. But there you go.
right.
But it is what it
I
is.
actually did get like a lot of them from online, but I don't have like all of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Well, technically, you do have them all alike. You could just go on that link where they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple of those sites like that. So
Yeah, it's like you can. To be fair, there are websites where you can watch all the episodes of the show for free as well. A lot
right,
of fellow members of the fandom often send me, because for years I was a sort of critic for the show. Well, unofficially, I wasn't an actual official critic or anything, but I did do a lot of episode reviews that people looked at. So I always knew a certain type of fan who could just send me a link to a new episode as soon as it came out and say, "Can I see that so I can do a review on it?"
right.
Which I know I shouldn't do, by the way, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, so I'll sort of leave this next bit to you guys. So Amanda, what are some some of the not only what's your favourite story that you've worked on for the comics, and what are some of your favourite stories that the comics have done in general? Would you
Oh
say?
man, that's a tough question because to answer because there's I've enjoyed pretty much every story I've gotten, like ones I've written as well as I've been assigned that other
Yeah.
people have written to do art for. Um, I would say because Luna and Luann are my favorite, I would definitely say the Two Louds of Crowd story is probably my favorite one that I've written and did art for. When I sent that over to, and it's funny because that actually took like I had to write that 3 times, like change it up because it was like it's a sibling relationship we don't see explored much in the show, so it was kind of hard to write a story about them because we just don't see them interact very much, maybe like little snippets here and there. So I was this was kind of like a new territory for me. So my editor kind of gave me some pointers to how to, pivot the story in a better direction. But yeah, I took about like 3 attempts to write, I would say. And then they really liked the character expressions in that one too. And so yeah, definitely one of my favorites. And then I really like the one I wrote for the spooky special, the Nightmare on Franklin Street, and that was interesting because they put that in the free comic book day issue last year, which I thought because usually when they release those free comic books, they usually have reprints of stories from previous books, and the spooky special had actually not released yet. So if people grabbed a copy of that, like they got basically like a pre-release of that story before it officially released. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I was honored that they chose one of my stories, and I actually did a book signing at my local comic shop on Free Comic Book Day last year. So that was a fun experience and definitely something I'd love to do again in the future. I'm trying to think what else. There's man. I'll say those are probably two of my favorites. I just finished writing and illustrating a story for volume 24. And then I'm currently working on 2 stories for volume 25, and those come out way later this year. I know volume 24 I believe comes out during the summer, and volume 25 I'm not sure if that has an exact publication date yet, but
would one of those stories be that one I suggested to you, the one about the Luna and Luann prank war?
I do want to submit that. I have not submitted that yet. I did have a couple pitches I submitted in December that I still have yet to hear feedback on. But that is going to be one that I'll submit in the next batch because like that's kind of how they do it. Like, I'd say I'd submit a pitch at least once a month, or 1 or 2, and like I said, not all of them get approved. I would say I've had about just as many pitches accepted as rejected. So it's like it's like 50-50.
Yeah, and with these pitches, do you? With these pitches, do you literally just like? Is it just like you come up with 1 or 2 sentences basically describing what the plot would be, and then they just say yes or no before you go any further? Is that how that usually works, or?
Pretty much. So, I'll send I'll reach out to my editor and be like, hey, I have some pitches in mind. It's okay if I send them your way? She's like, yeah, sure. And then she'll kind of give me pointers if I need to pivot it in a different direction. So like if there's something that needs changed in the pitch, or if she offers a suggestion, I can like kind of tweak that.
Yeah.
And then she'll send them over to the licensor, which is Nickelodeon, for review. And that can take like a couple weeks, it can take a couple months. Like that happened over the summer. I submitted like 4 pitches in June. I didn't hear back about those pitches till September.
Okay, so
it took a while.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So just give us an example, like if you can remember, what's like a very basic pitch that you came up with that was then accepted or tweaked later on, like to your memory, if you've got one.
Okay, so I could even use the Two Louds of Crowd story as an example. So originally, the pitch for that was going to be Luna and Luann doing like a performance for their younger siblings, or like I'm sorry, the youngest sisters, the 5 young sisters. And they were kind of all going to give a kind of a critique of it and like say like, oh, this is good, but it needs changing. So they all try to add their own flair to it. And so they both try to work together and like make all of that work for their performance so they could, make a better performance. But then that was like, I sent that to, I liked that idea. And then I sent it over to, Papercutz, and they sent it to Nickelodeon, and they were like, oh, how about let's have it be a talent show? And I was like, okay, I kind of expected that. Yeah. But Yeah, sometimes like, and then you have to sort of work around that, like, because yeah, sometimes like when you submit a pitch and it's not like, they're like, oh, we like this, but we want you to change a major plot point in it. You
Yeah,
have to work around that in some ways, and like I
yeah.
think that's why that story took me like 3 attempts to write,
Mm.
because it kind of
Well, I
changes
suppose
up on me.
if the initial pitch is only like 1 or 2 sentences long, it's a sort of very vague premise to begin with. I suppose you could argue, which
Yes,
gives it a lot of wiggle room to go in different directions. So when they say,
right.
"Oh, we want you to go in this direction instead," I suppose it's easy enough. Unless I don't know, have you ever like thought to yourself with that first pitch you submitted, "Oh yes, they'll definitely like that. I'll start writing for that now." And then they came back and said, "We like it, but you have to go in a different direction." And you're like, "Oh shit, I've got to change all this now. I've got to make that different." Or do you just wait for the feedback and then go writing more in depth?
Oh, I definitely wait for the feedback, and
Yeah,
it's
fair enough.
they
I suppose.
recommend I
Yeah,
do that just in case there's changes, which usually there are. With
yeah,
shorter stories, like 1 to 2 page stories, they usually like they might say like it might be something very minimal, but if it's like a 5 or 6 page
yeah,
story, even 7 page story, where you kind of have to have a beginning, middle, and end,
yeah, yeah.
and like the shorter comics are like usually
Well,
just something
yeah, a
fun,
one
or they're like
page
a one
story is
shot,
literally just a scene, isn't it? It's basically just, oh, this happens, the end. That's it. I
Yeah,
suppose the
pretty much.
6 and 7 page stories, I still don't think they're quite as long as like an actual episode story, but they're probably closer to it. Like there is a little bit of a narrative going on. I suppose a 6 or 7 page story lengthwise would be the equivalent of one of those Loud House animated shorts. You know what I mean? Like the ones where they're fighting over a
Yeah,
slice of pizza, that sort of thing. They're probably about that kind of
yeah,
length.
yeah. Right.
Um,
No,
I
I
love the
agree.
longer stories. I do
yeah,
like those ones.
I do too, because it gives you more, I think, creative freedom to, you know, um,
yeah.
I don't know, just create a more fleshed out story, like something that could inspire an episode, which I'm hoping that
Absolutely.
happens one day. I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
yeah. An interesting point is, oh God, I just had literally had this idea and I've just forgotten about it in like 10 seconds. Fuck's sake. Hang on, give me a sec. I was going to say something. Episodes of the show, 2 minutes long. I mean, no, it'll come back to me. Yeah, God, yeah, that's what happens when you get up at 2:30 in the morning, I suppose. But yeah, so Alana, from your point of view, what are some of your favourite comic stories that you've read from the Loud House Papercutz series?
Ooh. Hmm. This is so hard. There's so many. I'd say like probably like some of my like absolute favorite are the ones from the After Dark comic. I love that one so much just because like I love how like all the stories kind of like connect in a way, and they're all kind of like they're all different stories, but they all take place in like the same night, and I just feel like that was like something that was really creative. And I just love
yeah, I
those
like
ones.
that too.
Yeah.
They're all connected, and I like how like each one takes time at like takes place at a different time of the night. I just think that's cool.
Yeah. I would say those would be like my absolute favorites.
Yeah, I mean, what about? Do you remember any of Amanda's stories in particular, Alana? What would you think of some of those?
Mm. I'd say I think I really like the one. I know Amanda worked on that one where I think it was Rita like teaching all the kids like how to knit or something.
Oh, that one,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love that one so much.
cozy compulsion, yeah. I
Yeah.
almost forgot about that one actually. That came out. What book was that? I think that was volume 16. So yeah, that was like a while back for me.
Yeah, and it was like a really long story, so like I also liked it as well because of that. And I just think there was a lot to like do in that story.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one because I got to do a lot of prop work for it. Like drawing up the different like creations the sisters make with like when they're I can't remember if it was like knitting or crocheting. I think it was knitting. But yeah, I got to do like a bunch of like I think there was like one that was like a little plush alligator or something. There was a kind of like pillows and like a sweater. Like I got to do some prop work, which was fun because I did end up applying for the Nick Artist program over the summer, and I did submit some of that stuff for it. But so yeah, I like using my experience, to add to my portfolio, and unfortunately, I didn't get in with the Nick Artist program. It's a prestigious thing, but but then had I gotten the internship, I would have had to be in LA right now. And we all know what's happening in LA right now. It's on fire. So it's almost like,
I heard about that.
yeah.
That's terrible.
Well, yeah, it was awful. So I'm like, you know what? It sucked, getting the rejection. But then it's like, it was sort of like a blessing in disguise. And if it's, and the nice thing about that is you can apply for it every year. They run it every summer. So, yep.
Yeah. While you two are talking, I just remembered the question I was going to come up with. So you both said you really like the longer stories that the comics do sometimes because they allow things to be fleshed out a bit more. And one thing I was thinking about was, have like Papercutz or Nickelodeon or anybody expressed interest in some Loud House comics where one issue will focus on a single story, like a single longer story, as opposed to like several short stories all stacked together? I don't know if that's a thing that anyone has considered, or if the idea has even been pitched by yourself, Amanda, or anybody else who's working on them. Is that a thing, or?
I've thought about that before. I don't think so, because I think the whole point of each book is for different artists and writers to contribute.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it would be really cool to see that happen, or even like have multiple writers and artists contribute to like.
Well, either you could do that,
story. Yeah.
Or you could keep the series that's going on now, like the current Loud House Papercutz comic series, but they could also like start a second series of Loud House comics which focus more on like longer stories. I don't know if that's something they'd even be open to, but it's an idea, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly up to the licensor and what they see fit. I don't have a lot of creative input there. Like when it comes to even like the themes of each book, like that's all done by the licensor and everyone at Papercutz, and then I'm just assigned stories. But sometimes when I submit pitches, I try to have them fit the theme of the books that are coming out. Like I think this is the most recent volume, volume 22, Powered Up, so it's like all tech themed. So when they were taking pitches for that. Back early last year, I submitted the Robophibian pitch, and I submitted 2. That was the one that got picked, and so I was like, okay, that fits well with the theme. But then, like, you'll find stories in the books that fit with the theme, and then there'll just be like some like random one-off ones. But like, I think that's nice though, because there's like variety, So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those, isn't it? I mean, I suppose that's just how it all would work. Yeah, there's lots of different layers of management and people working on this stuff, so it's not always as simple as like when sometimes I try to propose it. But yeah, I mean, I have sort of expressed interest in potentially working on the comic series as a writer, if that's even possible. I don't even know if they're accepting anybody new at the moment. I think they're mostly interested in people who can also illustrate stories rather than just be writers, from what I can tell, which kind of sucks because I'm not a great artist.
Honestly, but I try sometimes.
Yeah, which kind of is a shame, but there you go. But what's interesting about with yourself, Amanda, is that not only do you work on the comics, but of course you also do a lot of commissioned artwork within the fan base.
Yes.
So obviously that ends up meaning that a lot of artwork within the fandom is similar to what's in the official comics, which of course is a nice bonus.
Oh yeah.
But so with your artwork side of things, with your like commissions and everything, how did all that sort of come about? Was that before or after you were working on the comics?
Oh, that was way before. So I started doing commissions as far back as like 2015. I think that was like when I first, and it wasn't even Loud. That was before Loud House.
Well, no, yeah, Loud House came out in 2016, didn't it? Well,
yeah.
You can say 2014 if you count the very first shorts, but obviously it wouldn't have been very popular back then.
Right. So I think the first commission I ever got was I think Jurassic World came out in 2015. I'm a big Jurassic Park, Jurassic World fan.
Yeah.
and somebody wanted me to draw the Raptor Squad from that movie, so I did that for them. And so that was like my first taste in commissions. And then like I would occasionally get, a commission here and there. It was like once or twice a month, if that. But then I think it was like September of 2018, I believe. Someone reached out to me on DeviantArt, and he wrote a fan fiction. I'm not usually a big fan fiction person.
Yeah,
I can be quite cringe sometimes. So, but I read his story. It was the Lincoln the Vampire Slayer story. I don't know if you ever read that.
No.
It's very long, but it's pretty good. But he reached out to me and asked me to do an illustration from it of the.
I think I might have seen that before. Yeah, I think I've seen.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah, it's way far back in my DeviantArt gallery, and I think it's like ever since that I started getting commissions from other people. They're like, oh, and I started to become more active on my DeviantArt account too, and because I created that way back in 2011, and like I think I posted like 2 pieces of artwork on it from then till 2018. So I didn't really have much of an online presence there, and so after I started doing a few Loud House commissions, that's when it really started to pick up, and now it's like I have like a list constantly of ones I'm working on, but like that's how much it's picked up over the years.
Yeah, I will do something else with you again. I promise, Amanda. I just want to think of a really good idea of something to do with you. As we sort of spoke about the other day. But yeah, obviously, by the looks of it, you're getting plenty of good business, so that's always good. That's always good money to have in your pocket.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you've effectively got 2 jobs, both working on the Loud House at the moment. So, one for working on the comics and one for working on the artwork commissions for the fans. So that's a pretty good way to earn a living, I suppose. I mean, I know you've also wanted a job writing on the actual show. I've wanted that for years, but I've never seen it got anywhere.
How hard is it to get like on the show? I always wondered that.
Hard enough. It's hard enough to get in contact with any of them.
There's that. It's with any of those major studios, you need to have connections, and that's a big deal. I did, and I think I've told you this before that I met a couple, or no, so I've only met one of the voice actresses on the show in person. But I've developed a connection with Christina Puccelli, who's awesome. And so she and I have conversed here and there, and she did tell me, like, if she ever got the opportunity, she would put a word out for one of the stories I wrote, which was the Too Loud's a Crowd story, because I sent her my book, and she actually signed it and mailed it back to me, and she wrote a really sweet note. She's like, I'll try to put it out there for you, but, she doesn't have, too much creative control over that, so as a voice actor.
Yeah.
So it's really like I think you just really got to know people, and that's I think like I said, that's how it is with any major studio.
In terms of like, the reason I even have an Instagram account in the first place was because I knew that was like the best place where I could actually get in any contact at all with anybody who worked on the show, because most of the staff members do have Instagram accounts. And while I haven't had like a full chat like I'm having with you guys right now or anything, I have been able to have brief interactions with the likes of Whitney Wetter, Andrew Brooks, Colton Davis, those sorts of guys, and they were pretty decent little back and forths, to be fair. So quite a few members of the Loud House crew do know who I am, because I have spoken to them before, but. Actually, in terms of like actually being able to get any serious conversations with them, it's damn near impossible. Most people usually point to the Chris Savino scandal as a reason for that. Yeah. Well, between Chris Savino, what he did, and I guess some of the more hostile fans as well, and like the way they've sort of been towards people working on the show, those 2 factors have contributed to, I think, the crew distancing themselves a lot from the show's own fan base,
I mean,
which
that
has
definitely
created a
makes
bunch of
sense.
problems.
It's unfortunate, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it
it's one
sucks
of
that the
those.
fandom is just so terrible. Like, it just, I don't know.
Oh, our fandom. Well, obviously not all of us, but about at least 90% of our fandom is an absolute shit show, which is a
Yeah,
shame.
that's you know what that's like with a lot of fandoms.
Yeah, I
It
know,
is.
but it's
You're
like the
not
Loud
supposed
House
to
fandom is
people.
especially infamous for this sort of thing. Like everyone
Oh
really
yeah,
loves to
for
badmouth
some
us.
strange reason. Yeah,
Even though like most fandoms are probably just as bad, but you know ours gets the most flack, 'cause of course it does. I mean, I do understand it, but I don't think it's as bad as it's said. But that's the internet for you. Exaggeration is the principle of how things are done.
right.
But it is what it is. But I'm hoping eventually I can really get into some good contact with some of these members of staff and get somewhere. And that's part of like what we're doing. For those of you guys who are followers of mine regularly, which most of you should be because you're watching this video, I've been working on a couple of spec scripts lately. Now, these are basically scripts that are designed, written, structured exactly to resemble the scripts for the episodes of the show. Which a fellow fan of mine, he sent me a link to some season 7 scripts, like some what appeared to be official season 7 scripts made by the actual writers of the show, which I've been basing my most recent stories on. And currently in the works, myself and Amanda, we're sort of co-writing a Luna and Luan centric story that we're hoping to get posted online very soon. Um, and once that's done, the plan is that Amanda here has Whitney Wetter's business email address, and we'll probably send that off to her. Hopefully, we might get somewhere with it.
Hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
Hopefully it does some fun, though.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, don't worry, Alana. I'll post it to you as well, so you can have a look at it.
Oh, cool.
I'm sure you'll love to see that. I mean, yeah. I mean, you both read my most recent spec script, didn't you? The one about Luna becoming an artist with Lily, which Amanda did some artwork with me on, by the way.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that looks really
Yes.
good.
Yeah, it's really cute. I like it.
Yeah.
It definitely makes Luna not as one-dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, that's always sort of been the thing, hasn't it? Like, Luna, she's a really good character. She's a really fun and enjoyable character. But I will say, like, if there's one thing the show really should have done by now, because we're about 9 seasons in, you know,
right.
why doesn't she have any, like, real interests outside of music? You know, come
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
There's 9 seasons in, guys.
And a lot of her episodes are pretty much Moon Goats episodes.
Yeah,
which I don't know
they're Moon Goat centric or Sam centric.
Yeah.
Or
And I'm
they're
like,
either
I
based
kind
on.
of
Yeah.
you know, ones where they were more, it was more focused on her as an individual character. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I had a brief discussion with Chris Savino a little while back,
Alright.
and he was telling me that he's like, when the episodes started to become more focused on the side characters and like the friend groups, he's like, he's like, I wasn't a big fan of that. He's like, you know, it's okay to have that, you know, within reason, but you know, when it just, I don't know, I like the
Yeah, I mean,
episodes personally that focus more on the family and
yeah,
the
I mean,
dynamic.
it's hard to say because it's at this point the Loud House has such a developed world, if that makes sense. Such a large cast of characters and a massive world that's built for itself. It's always been difficult for it to have that perfect balance of character focus between like all the different groups of characters and all the different ideas you could work with. I think the best seasons of the show are ones where they've struck the closest like ideal balance, where they've had just like the right amount of episodes focusing on the main family, and just the right amount of episodes focusing on other friend groups and so on. And it is difficult, but I think part of the reason like why seasons such as seasons 3 and 6 are so highly regarded are because they've got the best balance of that. Whereas some other seasons, like for example, I do like season 5, but there are way too many Lincoln and Friends episodes and Flip episodes and stuff in that.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's kind of hard. I don't know. I don't like saying this because obviously it's like it feels like it sounds like I'm throwing shade when I'm really not trying to. But do you guys feel that as talented as they are, and I do believe that everyone working on the show right now, they're all talented, hardworking, passionate about what they do, and very nice, lovely people based on the interactions I've had with them. But do you feel that they're creatively all with it? If that makes sense, do you feel like maybe sometimes they don't always have the best ideas? Is that fair?
I mean, it depends. I mean, every show has good episodes and bad episodes.
Yeah.
As I would say for the most part, they're pretty good. Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody's got different
Oh
artistic
yeah, I mean,
visions.
yeah, don't get me wrong, the show is still really good overall. It's definitely
Mhm.
overhated for a start. Um, it's one of those, like, sometimes they make some really great episodes, and you can see the talent and hard
Yeah.
work shine through when they hit it just right. But then you get so many other episodes, like, let's take the end of season 7, for example. There are a few stinkers there, like Party Foul. Who asked for an episode about Sergio? Um, you know?
He's too many episodes about him, in my
Yeah, and
opinion.
then, like, of all the Casa Grandes characters you're going to bring back, really, the C grade Yago is the one you're going with. And, and then you've got, like, that weird episode about Rusty and Morpheus, which nobody was really into. And then you've got another episode about Dante burying a secret, and you got a few other things in there, and it's like, okay, these are fine, but there's nothing more interesting that they could have came up with, if that makes sense. It's like there are so
Right.
many. I've got like hundreds and hundreds of ideas that everyone would love to see get made into real episodes, but
Mhm.
I
I
think I've
feel the
showed you
same
that
way.
post before where I had like 150 episode pictures or something in one go. Do you remember that? Did I send you that, Amanda? I know I sent it to you, Alana.
Yeah, there was a lot
Oh,
of good like episodes in there.
I don't know
Episode.
if I don't know if I got that from you,
I'll
but
send that to you after this. It's just like a massive list of episode pictures that I created about a year ago.
mhm.
I could just come up with them very easily. But yeah, put it this way: if I were to if I were to be the main writer for the Loud House, I could come up with content for at least 20 seasons. But yeah, it is one of those. I mean, I feel that's the only real issue. Like, a lot of people hate the current seasons compared to the older ones, and I'm like, look, the show has improved, technically speaking, in many ways since the early years.
It
It's only
has.
really its creative direction that I think is a little bit lacking at times, to an extent. Um,
Yes.
that's sort of always been my stance. Um,
You
uh,
know,
yeah,
I've sorry to interrupt. No, but like I know what got me into the show, and I've had this discussion with you before, was just the more slice of life it was.
yeah,
And like I said, it was very family oriented, very family focused. I love that. I love the dynamics between Lincoln and his siblings, or when they would
yeah,
do sibling pairs.
yeah.
Um, Chris told me that they would take sibling names out of a hat, and then whenever two sibling names they pull, they had to write an episode about. Like that. That's a fun idea.
I
I don't know if
guess
they still do that anymore,
probably
but
not,
it's
but
creative. And it gives you opportunities to write kind of pair two unlikely characters. So,
I
but
think yeah.
I think, like, in my opinion, that's what got me into the show. So I do feel like the first few seasons, I mean, they have their pros and cons. I would say season 3 was definitely when I really started getting into
Oh
the
yeah,
show.
season. I think most people regard
Yeah.
season 3 as the best of the show, for a
Yes.
lot of reasons. I did a whole podcast talk about it. If you want to watch that, I think I did it with you, Alana, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I
And
love season
I
3.
think Juvenile Imagination, formerly known as Fictional Media Buddy, I think he was involved in it as well. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember now, but yeah, I know I did one about season 3. So you can go and watch that. I've done loads of podcasts. I don't know. Have you watched any of my other ones, Amanda? Or
I watched I watched your one about you guys were talking about the writers,
oh yeah,
I
that was a
believe.
fairly recent one. Yeah, I remember
Yes,
that.
Oh
yes.
yeah, that one.
I've been meaning to get around to the other ones. I get busy in my work, and
Yeah,
then like
I get it. Yeah,
not that I
I
intentionally
mean,
forget, but like it gets put on the back burner, and
yeah.
I'm like,
Well, I
I want to
suppose like
watch it.
while you're doing your artwork, you could have it on in the background, sort of casually listening to it, because it's just
Yeah,
basically
that's
me
true.
talking. But yeah, we've
That's a
done
good
some
idea.
about Loud House Christmas episodes, wasted Loud House characters. Yeah, we did the one about the writers. We did some non-Loud House ones, like the one about Disney cartoons. I did one about the
that was
Europe
fun.
road trip arc. We've done some about specific characters and seasons and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there's quite a few in there. I'm sure at least some of them will interest you, Amanda. Maybe not all of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I have to check them out.
yeah. It should be quite good. I mean, yeah, I did do one about. Yeah, I know Luan is and Luna are your two favourites. I did do a
Mhm.
podcast about Luan quite early on, and I did one about Luna as well. So you might enjoy those.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I'll
Yeah,
definitely check them out.
yeah. It's just one of those, isn't it? Where I suppose while we're here, and since you're talking also about what got you into the show and the franchise in the first place, Amanda, I suppose we should just briefly touch on, because me and Alana have talked about this before in previous podcasts. What were some of your favourite episodes from the show be?
Ooh, okay. So I'm trying. I might be wrong on like which episodes are from which seasons.
Yeah, don't worry
Is
about
it
that.
definitely a lot of definitely some of the like early episodes. I like For Bros About to Rock. That's a fun one. I like no, that's the season one. I know that. I like Toads and Tiaras. I thought that was
Yeah,
pretty cute.
yeah, that was a very fun
Um,
early episode. Yeah.
yeah, and then season 3, because that was when I really started getting into it. I like the tricked Halloween special from
Oh, yeah, that
season
was
2.
cool.
That's a
That
fun
was
one
Yeah,
good.
all around.
yeah.
Um, season 3, Head Poets Anxiety, definitely one of my top
Oh, brilliant
favorites. I
episode. Yeah,
love how well that one is done.
yeah.
Um, really loud music is pretty good. Uh, Unpopular opinion, I like Sitting Bull. I know a lot
I
of
do
people
like
don't
Sitting
like that
Bull.
one.
Sitting
Yeah,
Bull's
that
one
was
of those
actually not so
episodes
bad.
where it's interesting. I think most people hate it because most people just hate Lynn Jr. It's one of those episodes where um, I think people were screaming for development for Lynn at the time, and because the
Yeah,
episode doesn't really do much of that, people didn't like it. But I will say this: it may not be like the richest story ever created for the show, but it is entertaining to watch. It is funny. I will give it that. It's a funny episode.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's
It's
all it had to
overhated a
be.
bit.
I think it's just
Right.
the wider context. People were hoping for more from like Lynn's character, and the episode didn't really deliver on that, and that may be why part of why people don't like it. Which I get, but at the same time, it is still a very funny episode. And Middlemen came out just after and gave us the character development they were hoping Sitting Bull would, so it worked out in the end anyway.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
think.
And what would be some of your favourites from the later seasons?
Oh geez. See, like I haven't really kept up with them as much. I mean, I've watched. I don't watch the show all the time. I kind of binge it here and there.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think. I like the Dark and Story Night. I thought that one
Yeah,
was fun.
that was
I
really
like
good.
the fantastical elements in it. See, and I'm like, I'm not a big fan of when they start doing surrealism in the show. And
With surrealism,
conversation.
it's one of those. It's all right as long as like you've got to justify its use. So I
Yes,
don't like for a start. You limit how much you do it because you don't want to do it all the time. But when you do it, does it benefit the story or the characters in any meaningful, significant way? If the answer is yes, fine, fair enough. It is a cartoon at the end of the day. If the answer is no, maybe you should rethink a certain plot point about the episode.
I agree. Yeah. Because like some of it's okay, like I said, if it's done within moderation, or like
Yeah, I mean,
even like
yeah,
people say like, oh, earlier seasons of the show, like they did some wacky stuff. I'm like, yeah, but like a Butterfly Effect was a wacky episode, but I'm like, yeah, but it was fantasy. It wasn't like
yeah,
this is actually happening.
yeah. I mean,
Like
technically,
you can do
Trashy,
beauty.
the living trash monster, he debuted in the very first season of the show, didn't he?
Yeah,
Oh
he was
yeah.
in Dream of Lily Dream.
Yeah, and then, of course he comes back in that episode. But yeah,
Let's see,
it's like,
what's
for
another
example,
one?
this year we had two movies that came out: No Time to Spy and the Casa Grandes movie. One of them's about spies, like a James Bond parody, and the other one
Yeah.
is about literal gods. And to be
Hmm.
fair, everyone loved them both, and I'm like, I suppose it just depends on how it's done. Um,
Yeah.
like, there are some episodes I really like that have some fantasy elements to them. Like Dream of Lily Dream is a brilliant episode. You know, but then you have some episodes like where they force it in. Like, don't get me wrong, I like that episode about Lucy using a ghost to, get fitter, but at the same time, you could have just got rid of all the ghosts and spells and just did a Lucy and Lid episode, and it would have been basically the same, but
Yeah.
probably could have been better. But
Yeah, that would have been good.
yeah, but it is one of those. But I mean, what we got was fine. But in that instance, it's like you didn't have to use those fancy elements. You could have just done a Lucy and Lid episode, and I think with a little bit of changing, you could have done like mostly the same thing, and it probably would have been even better. But there you go.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And then, of course, you've got some of the weaker season 7 episodes, like the Rusty and Morpheus episode, Let's Break a Deal. Again, it's all about magic spells. Again, I just don't think that was a particularly interesting premise to begin with, and yeah, it happened to be a fantasy episode. But again, there are some episodes where there is a fantastical element to it that are still really, really good. So yeah, it depends how it's done, execution, that sort of thing. It is what it is. But yeah. So yeah, as you can see, Amanda, we do often go into tangents in these podcast talks.
Okay.
We were talking about the comics. That we always do this. We have a central topic we discuss, and we will dive into other things. That's just how it works. So
No problem.
before I know it's getting a bit late for you, Amanda. So I won't keep this going too much longer. While we're here, Alana, as a fan of the comics, is there anything you'd like to ask Amanda while we're here in this conversation?
Well, something I've been wondering is like, I don't know if you would know this, Amanda, but I just wanted to know, like, are the comics considered like absolutely canon?
I would say yes and no, because there's some inconsistencies. There's things that happen in the comics that that haven't happened in the show, or like they don't always like sync up. So I think there's certain things like
even in the show, certain things don't sync up. Let's be fair. The continuity isn't completely on point. Yeah.
Well, like for example, you can take like even like existing characters in the show. If you want to make a story about them, you can like flesh them out a little bit, but like there's certain things that you can't do in the comics. I guess this is like a golden rule, because they might be saving that idea for like a potential debut in an episode. I actually there was a pitch I submitted last year, and it was because like how they like canonically they age the characters all up by a year. I think that was I don't remember what season they did that, but I remember I submitted a pitch, and it was similar to the episode where Lincoln's trying to teach Lenny how to drive to get her license, and but it was going to focus on like Lenny and Lynn Senior teaching Luna how to drive, but she kind of finds like her own way of doing it, and they were like, well, we don't really want to see that. Like, and I don't know if they're saving that for a potential episode one day, or maybe it was just something that they weren't interested in at the time. I don't know, but they told me that, like, yeah, you're not allowed to like, have quote unquote life-changing events for the characters in the comics, because it's like they want, if they're going to do something like that, like they'd rather save it for the actual show. So like there's that sometimes like causes a little bit of creative
Would you say,
limitation.
based on that it's what you could call B canon, where basically if nothing in the show contradicts it, it is canon, but if it comes into conflict with something the show does differently, the show overrides it, basically. So it's canon unless the show says otherwise. Which is what I always call my stories, the B canon timeline. If nothing in the show contradicts them, they're fucking canon. I don't care.
But yeah, since like I said, I'm an official writer, that I have to adhere to what they, what they want and what they choose to accept and what they reject. So I'm like, And it's an ongoing series. I think, if the show, eventually the show will, reach the end of its run, but and I'm sure they'll still be making books even after that. So maybe that could be saved for future books down the road. After
well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you're still working on the comics whenever the show finally comes to an end, maybe you'll get a lot more creative freedom at that point, because obviously, well, at this point, then they're not going to worry about the show doing something different or doing it later on. So they might start saying, yeah, sure, Amanda, go for it. Write whatever you want. And you might be able to really do those things that you've always wanted to do. I mean, for you, maybe the show ending is like a dream come true for you.
I mean, I would still love to get on to be at least a freelance writer, because I did get to talk to, briefly, I did talk to Jessica. I always forget how to pronounce her last name.
Jessica Brodsky.
Yeah, and I don't want to butcher her last name, but and she told, I told her what I do, that I work on the comics and stuff, and she was like, I asked her initially, I was like, do the show writers ever take inspiration from the comics and use them kind of as a Kickstarter for an episode, plot? And she said, honestly, I don't know. I'm not in the writer's room when all that's going on. But she did say, like, she would let the team know, that that I'm a writer, and she's like, in case we ever need some freelance writers, I'll be sure to reach out. But I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon. But that got me hopeful, because if it's meant to be, that door could open. But for now, I'm just gonna keep submitting ideas, doing fun ideas with characters in the books, and it's like Nick likes what I've produced, because they keep wanting me to do more. So
well, obviously, yeah. I mean, you've done really well, Amanda, to get as far as you have, and do all these bits of artwork and all these stories for the comics and everything. So fair play to you. You've managed to do more than I have in terms of official stuff. So yeah,
it's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to write for the Loud House in some official capacity one day, but who knows? I mean, at this point, if I were to somehow get onto the show, it's a bit late now anyway. We're already about to enter season 9. I mean, I suppose I have asked you this before, Amanda. What's your opinion on one day? Because I'm almost certain it will one day happen. The Loud House may have not reached the heights it was originally meant to, but it's still been a pretty overall successful show, commercially speaking. One day after the original run has ended, I'm sure they'll either do a reboot or a spin-off of some kind. They'll probably do a reboot. I'm almost certain there will be a reboot years down the line. With all the, cash grabs people like to do. I'm sure there'll be one. So what's your stance on, there being a reboot potentially one day? And if so, would you like to write on it? I certainly bloody would.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if they were looking for people, I mean, I'm sure that they might even have some original writers come back for that. But I would hope that they would also look into, more outside talent, because I think a lot of people have really good ideas. I've seen what other people write in the comics, and I really like stuff people write. Like, people have really good storytelling capabilities.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, and I understand it's like, you can't hire everybody.
No. Well, it is different. I suppose that is the thing. It is different, and maybe this is something, this is why I'm sort of pushing for me and you, Amanda, to do this spec script thing, because, you want to write for the show potentially one day. And obviously, writing for the show, it will be very different to writing for the comics, if that makes sense. The process will be very different. So I'll send you. I still need to send you that spec script again, don't I? That file. I'll do that today as well. Yeah, because you said you wanted to look at that again. The spec script file I originally sent you.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So because that will be good. That will be even if we don't get anywhere with it, even if Whitney Wetter or whoever doesn't look at it, I still think it's valuable experience for us both to do. because it helps us develop a technical ability of being able to write in the way that official TV writers do it, if that makes sense. Because it is very, having written normal stories and then having gone to write a spec script, it is very different how you do it.
Right.
Yeah, it is slightly weird, but yeah, I'll send you that file again so we can make some progress on that, because that'll be really, I think that'll be very valuable experience for us both. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, like I said, I got other projects right now, but I mean, like I said, things are starting to, after during the holidays, like the offices were closed, so like I had, had to wait for feedback and stuff.
Yeah.
And I finally got feedback on stories last week, and like I said, I just finished one, and then like the other one I'm doing inks for, and then the other one I'm doing colors. So those are almost done.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens with these other pitches I submitted.
Yeah.
I'll definitely submit the idea that you and I talked about for the Luna and Luann one.
Yeah.
But there's I love doing like I said, I like exploring character pairings that have not been explored in the show.
Yeah.
I had a chance to do a Lucy and Luna story.
Oh yeah, they've never really had an episode together, have they? Or even a comic story together.
And
not
I think it was volume 18 that I did a story about them for, and I didn't write that. That was someone else wrote it. But that was fun because I'm like, see, like that could work for an episode. You could pull.
Yeah.
Honestly, but that was it. One of the pitches I'm currently waiting feedback on. It is a Lucy. It's actually more of a Lucy and the Moon Goats story. And then there's one sometimes I take inspiration from episodes that have already come out. I really like the one, I think it was the last episode of which season just concluded? Season 8?
Season 8, and we're about to enter season 9.
Okay. The Kling and I love that episode. I thought it was really cute. And so I submitted a pitch about just kind of give a brief explanation. Lincoln sees like Lily bonding with the other siblings, like kind of having, doing.
Yeah.
But then she like surprises him when she wants to read one of his David Steele comic books with him. I was just like, something cute and wholesome, but like I do take inspiration from some of the episodes for stories, and so it just all depends. Like another thing is like they don't want comics to overlap with episodes. So like if I submit an idea that's too similar to an episode that's already in production, they'll be like, hey, like, and they'll tell me why, like, and that's fine. But so like, yeah, that's the thing is like when you have it's tricky when you have an ongoing series because you have to make sure that your stories do not conflict with what's currently being worked on. But it's tricky because episodes are worked on a year before they officially broadcast, and so in my case it's like I come up with pitches on the spot, but like if they conflict with something, then
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. Anyway, I know you're getting pretty tired, Amanda. You probably are as well, Alana. So I think we'll end it there. We're an hour in, believe it or not. So yeah. So yeah, that was a really fun talk. Very insightful little conversation about the Loud House comics and some other little tangents. It's great to have finally got this done. Really good having you on this podcast, Amanda.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on here. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you enjoyed this as well, Alana, being able to talk to an actual writer and illustrator for the comics.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been a really fun talk. I'll probably get this posted on YouTube within the next couple of days or something, whenever I get around to it. Yeah, really, really good talk. Everybody watching this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And what do you guys think of the Loud House comics, if you followed them at all? Do you really enjoy them? Do you think maybe some of the stories that they do could be worthy of being on the show? Let us know your thoughts. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will see you all next time.